I found out about the wedding rule in the family group chat. A bright, cheerful message with way too many emojis. No plus ones. Venue is tight. Only immediate family and official partners. No exceptions. I read it twice, then a third time, just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. It stung a little, but I understood. Weddings are expensive. Budgets are real. Chairs are limited. Fine. I sent a thumbs up and went on with my day. A week later, my cousin Mia called me. Her voice had that strange energy that means someone is trying very hard not to spill gossip, but is absolutely going to spill gossip. So, promise you won't freak out, she said. My stomach dipped. What? There was a pause. Then she said it. Your ex is coming to the wedding. At first, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it sounded impossible. No, he's not, I said. There are no plus ones. Family only. Another pause. Yeah, she said softly. Except, apparently, he's an exception. The room tilted a little. My brain couldn't catch up. I haven't dated him in 2 years, I said slowly. Why would he be there? Mia hesitated. Your mom invited him. I went silent. My heart did that thing where it beats fast but feels heavy at the same time. Why? I whispered. She said he's still family. And that he's good for you. Good for me. The words burned. This was the same man who spent months convincing me I was too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic. The same man who rolled his eyes when I cried, who said I was lucky he put up with my moods, who made me feel small and quiet, clever ways. And my parents adored him. He was polite, charming, knew how to compliment them, helped my dad with the grill, helped my mom carry groceries. Meanwhile, when I tried to say I wasn't happy, they told me I was overthinking everything, that I needed to learn compromise. I took a deep breath. So they banned everyone else, I said, but invited the one person I had to crawl out of emotionally. Mia didn't answer right away. Then she said softly, yeah. When we hung up, I sat there staring at the wall. Anger came, then confusion, then that familiar shame. That voice that said, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm the difficult one. Maybe I should be more mature. I almost convinced myself of it. Almost. Until I remembered the night I finally left him. The night I stood in the kitchen, shaking, while he explained all the ways I had caused every argument. The way he told me nobody else would be patient with me the way he was. The way I apologized while packing. For existing wrong. And I remembered sitting in my car afterward, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. Nobody, good for me, should make breathing feel like a skill. I messaged my mom. Short. Calm. I heard you invited him. Is that true? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Then her reply came. Don't start drama. He's important to the family. My jaw clenched. Important to the family. More important than my boundaries. My feelings. My safety. I typed back slowly. He is not my partner. He is not family. Please uninvite him. Her answer arrived fast. Stop being petty. Be civil for one day. It's not about you. And there it was. That sentence they always use to end conversations. It's not about you. Translation. Stop having needs. Stop reacting. Shrink. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. This time, I wasn't sure I could, or if I even should. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling while the conversation kept replaying in my head like a scratched record. No plus ones. No partners. No friends. No dates. But my ex gets a seat. Gets a plate. Gets a smile. Gets a welcome. I kept hearing my mom's words. Be civil. It's not about you. I thought about all the times in my life that phrase had been used like duct tape over my mouth. When a relative made fun of my body. It's not about you. When my brother ruined something I owned and laughed. It's not about you. When someone crossed a line and I dared to say, that hurt. It's not about you. Somehow, it was never about me, unless they needed help, silence, or obedience. Around 2 a.m, I sat up and turned on the lamp. My heart wouldn't settle. My brain kept wandering back to him, to the subtle corrections, the half-jokes, the way he always positioned himself as the logical one and me as the overreactor. He never yelled. He rarely cursed. That almost made it worse. He dismantled me calmly, like taking apart a clock, one gear at a time. Are you sure that happened like you remember? You're reading too much into it. You get upset so easily. He'd say those things with a sigh, with a gentle smile, like he was doing me a favor. And my parents loved it. They saw someone who balanced me out, someone calm, someone polite, someone who never challenged them either. I remembered a dinner at our house once. He interrupted me mid-story to correct a detail that didn't even matter. Everyone laughed. My mom patted his shoulder. "See," she said. "This is why he's good for you. He keeps you grounded. Grounded, as in tethered, as in anchored, as in weighed down." I didn't realize how heavy the rope had been until I cut it. I swung my legs out of bed and padded to the kitchen for water. The apartment was quiet, safe, mine. And suddenly the thought of walking into a wedding where he'd be surrounded by my family, validated, endorsed, approved, made my stomach twist. Because it wasn't just that he would be there. It was the message underneath. We still choose him. We still prefer him. We still think he knows you better than you know yourself. I opened my phone again and scrolled up the messages. My mom's words glowed in the dark. "Don't start drama. It's not about you." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "This is about me. He hurt me. I don't want him there." Then I deleted it, because I already knew how that would land. I could hear the responses in my head. "You're exaggerating. You're too emotional. It was years ago. Be mature." I leaned against the counter and whispered into the empty kitchen. Why is maturity always code for silence? Saying it out loud made my chest sting. Because I knew the answer. As long as I swallowed my discomfort, everything stayed peaceful. For them. The next morning, I called Mia again. "Am I crazy for being upset?" I asked. She didn't even hesitate. "No," she said. "If my ex showed up at a family wedding because my parents decided he's still family, I'd leave." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "I feel guilty for even thinking that," I said. "Of course you do," she replied. "You were trained to feel guilty whenever you draw a line." I sank onto the couch. The line. That was exactly what it was. Not revenge. Not punishment. Not drama. A line. A simple boundary. But simple doesn't mean easy. Mia hesitated. "Can I say something?" "Yeah. Your parents didn't invite him for him," she said. "They invited him because he fits their story better than you do right now." That sentence cut straight through me. Because it was brutally true. He was the version of me they wanted. Calm. Agreeable. Polished. Manageable. And if he showed up, smiling, talking, charming everyone, it would make them feel right. Like I was the problem all along. I closed my eyes. So what do I do? Mia sighed. Whatever protects your peace. Peace. Not politeness. Not image. Not comfort for everyone else. My peace. I hung up and sat there for a long time, twisting the corner of a blanket between my fingers. And somewhere in that quiet, underneath the guilt and fear and habit, a new thought whispered. I don't have to go. The thought scared me the second it arrived. I don't have to go. It felt illegal somehow, like skipping a final exam or ignoring a fire alarm. Weddings in our family weren't optional. They were obligations. Proof of loyalty. Proof of unity. Proof that whatever happened behind closed doors didn't matter as long as we all smiled for the camera. I walked around the apartment with that thought sitting in my chest like a new piece of furniture I wasn't sure where to put. I don't have to go. My parents had always framed attendance as respect. Respect meant showing up even when it hurt. Respect meant swallowing emotions. Respect meant smiling through discomfort. But suddenly I realized something I should have seen years ago. Respect that only goes one direction is not respect. It's control. I sat down at my small kitchen table and thought back over the last few years. All the times they'd waved away my feelings. All the times they sided with whoever seemed calmer, louder, older, more confident. My voice always came last. My comfort always came last. But this wasn't some random dinner. This was a room where they wanted to seat my past right across from me and call it maturity. I opened my phone again. My mother had sent a photo of floral centerpieces with the caption, "Isn't this gorgeous?" No apology. No acknowledgement. No conversation. Just pretty distractions. I typed, "We need to talk about the guest list." Then I stopped. Because we had already talked. And the answer had been clear. Don't start drama. Be civil. It's not about you. I erased the message and tried to picture the wedding. I could see the exact moment I would walk in. He'd be there, laughing, maybe hugging my relatives. My parents would beam. Someone would say, "See, you two are still meant to be around each other." Someone would joke. Someone would watch my reaction like it was entertainment. And if I flinched, they'd call it immaturity. If I cried, drama. If I avoided him, rude. In every version of that night, I was the problem. My body gave the answer before my mind did. My shoulders tightened. My stomach twisted. My breathing went shallow. Everything inside me screamed no. I sat back and let that scream echo. Not out loud, just internally. A quiet refusal. A quiet boundary. A quiet survival instinct. For the first time, I asked myself a different question. Not, what will they think if I don't go? But, what will happen to me if I do? I thought about the months after I left him. The therapy sessions where I could barely talk. The panic that would flare up over nothing. The way I had to teach myself that asking for kindness wasn't unreasonable. Did I really want to undo all that work in one night just to look cooperative? I shook my head slowly. No. I opened a blank text. My fingers hovered, shaking. Everything in me wanted to soften it, cushion it, make it easier for them to digest. But then I remembered how they had made choices for me without asking how they would land. So I kept it simple. I typed, "I won't be attending the wedding. I'm not comfortable with him being there. I wish you a beautiful day." Then I stared at it for a long time. My heart pounded. My throat felt tight. Every instinct begged me to delete it, apologize, take it back before it even existed. Instead, I closed my eyes, took one deep breath, and pressed send. The message left with a quiet swoosh. No fireworks, no dramatic music, just a boundary traveling through the air. A few seconds later, the typing dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. And I knew, even before the reply came, that the storm was about to start. The first message came from my mom. Fast, like she had been waiting with a reply already loaded. "Are you serious?" Then another one. "This is childish." Then another. "We already paid for your seat." I stared at the screen. Not a single question. Not a single, "Why do you feel this way?" Just cost. Image. Inconvenience. I typed slowly. "I'm uncomfortable." That's all I said, because that should have been enough. A few seconds later, my phone began ringing. Mom. I let it ring. She called again. Then again. When I didn't answer, she switched to voice notes. Her voice sounded tight, controlled, like she was trying very hard not to yell. "I don't understand where this attitude is coming from. You're making everything about you. This is your cousin's big day. It's one person. Be polite. Be mature." I sat there listening with my jaw clenched. One person. As if one person couldn't hold a history. Couldn't hold every moment I had felt small, wrong, unstable. I messaged back. "I'm not going. Please respect that." 10 seconds later, my dad chimed in. Calm. Short. Disappointed. "You're embarrassing us." The word hit harder than I expected. Embarrassing. Not hurting. Not struggling. Embarrassing. A problem to be managed. A stain on the picture. I typed, "I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I'm taking care of myself." He replied almost instantly. "You're creating drama for no reason." He's moved on. You should too. There it was. The suggestion that pain expires. That boundaries have a time limit. That because I didn't bleed visibly, it shouldn't matter anymore. I leaned back on the couch and stared at the wall, feeling the familiar urge to apologize rise like a reflex. I almost wrote, "Sorry, okay, I'll come." But something inside me dug its heels in. No. Not again. A few minutes later, my brother texted. "Wow. Seriously. Mom is crying. Great." Now I was the villain in everyone's story. I responded, "I'm not doing this to hurt her." He replied with a laughing emoji. "You're always doing something. Always sensitive. Always dramatic." I closed my eyes, breathed slowly, and put the phone face down. The apartment was quiet, but inside, every old guilt alarm was blaring. "You're difficult. You're selfish. You ruin things. You should just give in." And then, underneath all those voices, a much smaller one whispered, "You're allowed to feel safe." I held on to that one like a rope. An hour passed. Then 2. No more messages. Just silence. The kind that isn't peaceful. The kind that feels like exile. At some point, I made tea and sat at the table. My hands shook as I lifted the cup. I wondered if I was overreacting. I wondered if someday I'd look back and think I had blown everything out of proportion. But then I pictured myself at that wedding, sitting at a table, smiling for photos, pretending my chest wasn't tight, pretending my hands weren't sweating, pretending the person who once made my world smaller wasn't being applauded by the people who were supposed to protect me. And suddenly, staying home felt less like rebellion and more like survival. Late that night, my mom finally texted again. "Fine. Do what you want. Don't expect sympathy later." I stared at the sentence until the words blurred. Not love. Not understanding. Just a warning. A threat wrapped in politeness. I set the phone down gently and whispered to myself. I did the right thing. It didn't make it easier, but it kept me steady. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. It was strange how normal the morning looked. Sun through the curtains. Coffee brewing. Cars passing outside. Meanwhile, my phone stayed quiet. No good morning. No are you sure. No last chance. Just absence. Like I had been quietly written out of the script. I washed my mug. Folded laundry. Tried to read. My brain wouldn't cooperate. Every few minutes my imagination wandered to the venue. I pictured the white chairs, the string lights, the coordinated outfits, and him, standing there with a drink, laughing, being charming, being everything they wished I still was. I wondered if anyone would mention me, if someone would ask, "Where is she?" And what my parents would say, "She's busy. She's not feeling well. She didn't want to come." That last one stung. Not because it wasn't true, but because it would be delivered without context. Without the part where they chose my discomfort. Without the part where they made an exception for a man who once convinced me my memory couldn't be trusted. I walked to the window and watched the people outside. A couple holding hands. A man walking his dog. A kid on a scooter. Life moving forward. No one knowing a family storm was happening in a house across town. Around noon, Mia texted, "I'm here." I took a breath and typed back, "How is it?" She sent a picture. Tables. Flowers. A caption. "Pretty." Then another message. "He's here." My throat tightened. 3 dots blinked. Then, "Your mom is talking to him like nothing ever happened." I closed my eyes. My heart sank and settled at the same time. Because that was exactly what I expected. Pretend. Gloss over. Rewrite. Mia added, she told someone, "We're so glad he could still be part of our family." There it was. Out loud. Clear as daylight. He still belonged. I did not. A strange calm washed over me. Not relief. Not anger. Just clarity. For years, I had twisted myself trying to be understandable. To be acceptable. To be someone who didn't make things about me. And yet, here was the truth staring back at me. It had never been about me. It had always been about what made them feel comfortable. Even if that comfort came at the expense of my sanity. Another text from Mia. "Do you want me to leave if it gets weird?" My chest warmed. I typed back, "No. Enjoy the day. I'll be okay." And somehow that wasn't a lie, because something inside had clicked into place. I made lunch. I washed the dishes. I put on soft music. The world didn't collapse like they always warned it would if I chose myself. I still existed. The sky didn't crack open. My phone buzzed again around evening. This time, from a number I hadn't seen in a while. Him. A short message. No hey. No greeting. Just, "Wish you could have been here." It would have meant a lot. My stomach twisted. I didn't reply. I didn't know him nostalgia. Or politeness. Or a doorway back in. I turned the phone face down and took a slow breath. Then another. Outside, the sun dipped lower. Light pooled on the floor in long strips. And I realized something that both comforted and hurt. Sometimes, you don't get closure from the people who broke you. Sometimes the closure is simply choosing not to walk back into the room. The next morning, the group chat exploded like fireworks at midnight. Photos. Videos. captions full of hearts and exclamation marks. Look how beautiful. Look how perfect. Look at the happy family. I scrolled in silence, faces smiling, glasses raised, arms around shoulders. Everyone looked so unified, like nothing had ever been fractured, like there was no empty chair where I would have sat. I noticed something I might have missed before. In every single photo, people were angled toward him, leaning in, laughing with him. My dad had his hand on his shoulder. My mom's smile looked softer than any I had seen directed at me in years. Under one picture, someone had commented, "He's always been part of us." I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just felt this deep, quiet ache that spread through my chest like slow ink. Not because I wanted to be there, but because I finally saw, without filters, the role I had been assigned all my life. Stay small. Stay quiet. Fit the frame. Don't make ripples. I put the phone down and sat at the edge of my bed. For the first time, I let myself replay the relationship honestly. Not the highlight reel. The real one. The nights I apologized for my tone when I hadn't raised my voice. The times I questioned my memory because he insisted I misheard. The way he always seemed to know exactly which button to press to make me doubt my judgment. I remembered one night when I tried to explain to my parents that I didn't feel like myself anymore. My mom had sighed and said, "That's just what relationships are. You compromise. Compromise." The word echoed. What had I compromised? My comfort, my voice, my perception of reality. And somehow, all of that still wasn't enough to qualify as reason in their eyes. My phone buzzed again. A message from my mom. "Wedding was beautiful. You should have come." That sentence carried so much hidden meaning it felt heavy in my hands. Not "How are you?" Not "Are you okay?" Just a verdict. You should have chosen differently. You should have swallowed it. You should have put us first. I typed and erased 3 different replies. I finally wrote, "I'm glad everyone had a good time." Then I hit send and left it there. A while later, she answered, "Maybe next time you'll think before making everything so dramatic." My jaw tightened. She still didn't get it. Maybe she didn't want to. Maybe seeing me clearly would require her to see herself clearly too. And that would be uncomfortable. I set the phone aside and opened a notebook I had bought months earlier but never used. On the first page, I wrote one sentence. Things that hurt, but I pretended didn't. And then, slowly, carefully, I started listing. Not just him. Them. The comments. The dismissals. The patterns. The times my feelings were minimized. It felt like cleaning out a cluttered attic. Dusty. Painful. Necessary. Halfway through, I stopped and stared at the words. A realization landed with surprising calm. I'm not the unreasonable one. I'm not the fragile one. I'm the only one in the room who keeps trying to be honest. That thought didn't make me angry. It made me steady. Later that evening, Mia called. She sounded tired. "You made the right decision," she said. It was awkward at moments, like there was this invisible thing nobody wanted to mention. But it wasn't your job to carry that. I let out a breath I hadn't noticed I was holding. "Thanks," I whispered. She paused. "Your mom kept saying you were being dramatic." I didn't agree. I just thought you should know. Weirdly, it didn't break me. It confirmed what I had started to see. When I set boundaries, they called it drama. When I stayed silent, they called it peace. Maybe the problem wasn't my reaction. Maybe the problem was the environment needing my silence to function. After we hung up, I sat by the window and watched the evening settle. For the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like room. Room to think. Room to feel. Room to exist without apologizing. And I realized something simple and terrifying. If choosing myself makes me the villain in their story, then maybe I've been trying to live in the wrong story. A couple of days passed, and something strange started happening. My phone, usually quiet unless my friends texted, began lighting up in short bursts. Not from my parents. Not from him. From relatives I barely spoke to. Cousins. An aunt. Even my godmother. Each message had the same tone. Soft. Careful. Curious. "Hey, are you okay?" I heard there was some tension. Just checking in. Nobody said exactly what they'd heard, but they all seemed to know that I had finally said no to something, and that, apparently, had created waves big enough to travel through the family. I answered politely, I'm fine. Just taking some space. Most of them sent back thumbs up emojis and small hearts. But one message stood out. It was from my aunt, the one who always seemed to watch everything without saying much. She wrote, "I'm proud of you. Setting boundaries is not disrespect. It's self-respect." I stared at the words longer than I meant to. Self-respect. I wasn't used to that phrase being applied to me. Growing up, respect meant obedience, compliance, getting smaller, saying yes when every part of me wanted to say no. Now someone was reframing it, and it felt like she had cracked a window in a stuffy room. Later that afternoon, I went for a walk. No music, no distractions, just my footsteps and the dull rhythm of my thoughts. I passed a couple arguing quietly on a park bench, past kids laughing on scooters, past a woman sitting alone with a book, looking peaceful. And suddenly, out of nowhere, a question surfaced. If I met someone like me, telling this story, what advice would I give her? The answer came instantly. Leave sooner. Listen to yourself. Don't wait for proof that hurts more than it already does. That realization stung because it exposed something I hadn't admitted. I hadn't stayed out of love alone. I had stayed out of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear that maybe I was, in fact, the problem. And he had fed that fear brilliantly. You're too sensitive. You overthink everything. Nobody else would put up with this. Words that had sounded like teasing at first, then like warnings, then like truth. I sat on a bench and let the memory wash through me. The dinners where I stayed quiet to avoid arguments. The apologies I gave for things I hadn't done. The nights I lay awake rehearsing how to explain myself better next time, as if the right phrasing could finally unlock his empathy. It never did. On the walk back, I felt something shift. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. Clarity that love isn't supposed to make you shrink. Clarity that loyalty doesn't mean tolerating harm. When I got home, there was a voicemail waiting for my mother. Her voice had that calm, clipped tone she used when she felt morally superior. "We're worried you're isolating yourself. You've always been dramatic about emotions. You should talk to someone, maybe a counselor. But don't push us away over nothing." Over nothing. The words burned. I replayed the message twice, just to be sure I had heard it right. She had turned my pain into personality, my boundaries into immaturity, my decision into mental instability. For a moment, guilt flickered. Maybe I should call her back. Explain again. Try harder to make her understand. Then I caught myself. I had been trying to explain for years, and every time, the result was the same. They didn't listen. They just reframed the story so that they were still the reasonable ones. I opened my notebook again and wrote another sentence. I am not required to bleed to keep the peace. Reading it back felt like swallowing something strong and bitter but necessary. That evening, Mia came over with takeout and 2 cans of sparkling water. We ate on the couch and watched something dumb on TV until laughter loosened the knot in my chest. Then, quietly, she said, "You know, it's not just that you left. It's that they lost control of the narrative. And that scares people." The words landed like puzzle pieces clicking together. Yes, that was it. For the first time, I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't toning it down. I wasn't rewriting events to protect them. I was simply standing where I stood, and they didn't know what to do with that. Later, when the apartment was quiet again, I turned off the lights and sat in the dim glow from the window. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel heartless. I felt something deeper. A steady promise to myself. A promise that I would never again beg someone to treat me like I mattered, even if that meant losing people who insisted love only worked on their terms. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight creeping across the floor, slow and patient, like it had all the time in the world. For a few seconds, I forgot everything. I just listened to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of traffic outside. Then my phone buzzed. Reality came back. Another message, this time from my dad. Short, sharp, efficient. "Call your mother. She's upset. This is getting out of hand." Out of hand. I stared at those words and almost laughed. For so long, everything had been out of hand for me. My boundaries, my voice, my peace. And nobody had called then. Nobody had sounded alarmed when I cried myself to sleep, or when I swallowed things that hurt just so the room could stay calm. But now, the second I stopped cooperating with the script, suddenly there was urgency. I didn't call back. Instead, I made coffee. A slow, deliberate ritual. Scoop. Pull. Wait. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and grounding. I took my mug to the table and opened my laptop. Bills. Work emails. A calendar reminder about a project deadline. My real life. The one that had somehow existed quietly alongside all the chaos. 4 years, I had been living like my life was an intermission between family dramas. Now I was realizing something uncomfortable and freeing at the same time. My life was the main story. Everything else was background. Around noon, my phone rang again. Same name. Same insistence. I let it ring out. Another voicemail. This time his tone had shifted. Less firm. More annoyed. Ignoring us isn't mature. We're still your parents. We deserve respect. Whatever this is, it needs to stop. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. In their world, respect was a one-way street. They spoke. I obeyed. They hurt. I swallowed. They demanded. I delivered. And now, me choosing silence was seen as an attack. I opened my notebook again and wrote, "Respect is not a leash." Saying it on paper made it real. I decided to take a walk to clear my head. I went to a small secondhand bookstore a few blocks away, the kind that smelled like dust and secrets. The owner, an older woman with silver hair tied in a low bun, smiled when I walked in. "Back again," she said. "Looking for something specific this time?" "Something about boundaries," I joked weakly. She nodded thoughtfully and handed me a worn paperback about growing up in difficult families and learning to detach without guilt. I flipped through the pages. Sentences jumped out like they had been waiting for me. "You are allowed to disappoint people who benefit from your silence. Love without accountability becomes entitlement. Healing often looks like becoming someone your old life can no longer control." My throat tightened. I bought the book and sat on a park bench nearby, reading slowly, underlining lines with the corner of a receipt. For the first time, the chaos had language. Patterns. Explanations. It wasn't just me being overly sensitive. It was me finally recognizing a system that had never made space for me to be human. While I read, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't my parents. It was him. The person I used to believe would always understand me better than anyone. "So," the text said, "your parents called me. They said you're being cold. They're worried. Maybe you should reach out. Don't blow this out of proportion." My fingers tightened around the phone. There it was again. Minimize. Shrink. Smooth things over. I typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I replied, "Please don't speak to them about me. And please stop telling me how big or small my pain is." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. His next message landed heavy. "You're pushing everyone away. At some point it won't be them. It'll be you." I felt the familiar sting in my chest. The old reflex to explain, to justify, to prove I wasn't the villain. I didn't. Instead, I put my phone on airplane mode and went back to my book. Page after page, I felt myself untangling, thread by thread. Later, as evening fell, I cooked myself dinner. Nothing special. Pasta, a little sauce, a sprinkle of cheese. But I sat at the table, not on the couch. I lit a candle. I ate slowly. For once, my meal wasn't rushed between apologies and anxiety. After washing the dishes, I stood by the window and watched the city lights flicker on. Something settled in my chest. Not certainty, not joy, but a steady, grounded quiet, the kind that whispers, "You are allowed to choose yourself." That night, before bed, I wrote one more sentence in my notebook. Maybe the real separation isn't physical distance. Maybe it's the moment you stop begging for crumbs and realize you deserve a seat at your own table. Then I turned off the light, climbed into bed, and let the silence wrap around me like a promise that the worst part, the confusion, the self-doubt, the endless explaining, was finally starting to end. 2 days later, the silence finally cracked. Not with a text, not with a voicemail, with a knock. Loud, firm, the kind that doesn't ask permission. My heart jumped into my throat. I froze in the middle of the living room, listening. Another knock. "Open up." My dad's voice. calm but edged. The old instinct kicked in immediately. Fix your face. Don't escalate. Be pleasant. I swallowed, walked to the door, and opened it just enough to see both of them standing there. My mom's lips were pressed thin. My dad's hands were tucked into his jacket pockets like he was keeping them from doing something. We were in the area, he said. A lie. They lived 40 minutes away. My mom stepped forward like she was going to come in automatically. I didn't move. For a second, her eyes flickered with surprise. That tiny pause said everything. She wasn't used to asking. Can we come in? She finally said. My chest tightened, but I nodded and stepped aside. They looked around the apartment like inspectors. Too small. Too quiet. Too independent. My mom sat on the edge of the couch, back straight, purse clutched to her side like armor. My dad remained standing. We need to talk, he said. Of course we did. We always needed to talk, whenever I stepped outside their expectations. Never when something actually hurt me. I sat in the chair across from them and waited. My mom started. This has gone far enough. Her tone was gentle on the surface, sharp underneath. You've been ignoring calls. You skipped the wedding. You've made everyone uncomfortable. This isn't you. I almost laughed. Because it was me. The most honest version of me they'd ever seen. We're worried, she continued. You're isolating. You're pulling away. That's not healthy. I took a breath. Slow. Grounded. I'm not isolating, I said quietly. I'm protecting myself. My dad scoffed. From what? Your family. I held his gaze. From situations that hurt me. From people who don't listen when I say I'm not okay. My mom's eyes narrowed just a little. You're still upset about the wedding thing. That's what this is. You're making too much out of it. He's harmless. The word hit me like a slap. Harmless. I felt the heat rise in my chest. He's not harmless to me, I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. He made me question my sanity. He talked over me. He made jokes about my feelings. He told you I was dramatic when I tried to explain. And you believed him. A flicker of defensiveness flashed in my father's eyes. We didn't want to take sides. You did, I said softly. You just didn't say it out loud. The room went quiet. My mother shifted, uncomfortable. We can't erase the past, she said. But we expect you to be mature. Families learn to move on. Moving on, I replied, doesn't mean pretending something didn't happen. It means acknowledging it so it stops happening again. My dad's jaw tightened. You embarrassed us. There it was again. Not you were hurt. Not we didn't see it. Just embarrassment. Image. Reputation. My fingers curled into my palms. I chose not to put myself in a painful situation, I said. That shouldn't embarrass you. That should tell you how bad it was. My mom sighed dramatically. You always think in extremes. Always all or nothing. You're not a child anymore. Something inside me snapped quietly. Not loud. Not explosive. Just final. Exactly, I said. I'm not a child, which is why I get to decide what happens to me. A long silence settled between us. My dad looked at the floor. My mom stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. So what? She said finally. Is this how it's going to be now? Boundaries. Rules. Distance. She said the words like they were dirty. I nodded once. If that's what keeps me sane, yes. My dad exhaled through his nose, frustrated. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. You don't get to treat us like the enemy. I shook my head slowly. You're not my enemy. But sometimes you've been careless with me. And I'm not pretending it didn't happen anymore. Another silence. Heavy. Then, unexpectedly, my mother's expression softened, but only for a moment. We just want our family back, she whispered. The old me would have crumbled right there. Would have apologized. Would have promised to behave. But I heard something underneath her words. We want the version of you that doesn't make us uncomfortable. I swallowed. We can have a relationship, I said. But it has to be honest. And it has to be safe. For me too. My dad shook his head, as if I had spoken another language. You're overthinking. Then he stood. Conversation over. My mom followed, gathering her purse. She paused at the door. Think about what you're doing, she said softly. You don't want to end up alone. The sentence slid under my skin. Old fear. Old threat. I felt it try to latch on, and then quietly loosen. I looked at her and answered, calm and clear. Being alone is not the worst thing that can happen to me. Losing myself is. She blinked. Didn't reply. They left. The door clicked shut. I leaned against it, heart pounding, hands shaking. Not from regret, but from the weight of finally saying what had lived inside me for years. And for the first time, I realized something steady and solid. Boundaries don't destroy relationships. They reveal which ones were built on you disappearing. The day after they left, the apartment felt strangely quiet. Not empty. Not lonely. Just steady. Like a room where someone stopped shouting, and the walls finally exhaled. I made coffee, sat at the table, let the silence sit with me instead of trying to fill it, and then my phone started ringing. First my mom, then my dad, then my brother. Call after call. No voicemails, just ringing. Then the text came. Call us. This is getting ridiculous. We just want to talk. You're making things harder than they need to be. I stared at the screen and didn't move. Not out of spite. Not out of punishment. Out of clarity. Every message said the same thing. Fix this, so we don't have to change. I set the phone face down and opened my laptop instead. Work loaded. Emails. Deadlines. Real life. My life. For the first time, it felt separate from them in a way that wasn't scary. It felt like mine. Around noon, my best friend called. Did they show up? She asked. I nodded even though she couldn't see it. Yep. And I didn't fold. The line went quiet for a second. Then she laughed softly. That's huge. It was. Bigger than I realized. Later that afternoon, my brother finally left a voicemail. I listened. Look, he said, sighing. They're freaking out. They think you hate them. Can you just apologize for how you said things? Not what you said, just the way. It would make this easier. There it was. Again. Make it easier. For them. Not healthier. Not fairer. Easier. I replayed the message once, just to be sure. Then I deleted it. That night I went for a walk. The air was cool. The streetlights hummed softly. I watched people in their apartments, eating dinner, laughing, arguing, living lives not centered around pleasing one single orbiting sun. And something clicked. My entire childhood had been built around weather patterns that changed depending on their mood. If they were upset, everyone adjusted. If they were stressed, everyone quieted down. If they were happy, we were allowed to breathe. I had learned to read faces faster than books. I had learned to shrink before storms. It wasn't loyalty. It was survival. And survival has side effects. You forget you're allowed to want anything. You forget your no counts. You forget you have a door you can close. When I got home, another message was waiting. This one from my mother. We talked it over. We'll forgive you. But we need you to admit you overreacted. I stared at the words. Not angry. Not shocked. Just done. The sentence said everything I needed to know. Forgive you. For protecting yourself. For saying the truth out loud. For stepping out of the script. I typed slowly. Not emotional. Not explosive. Just true. I didn't overreact. I finally reacted. I hovered for a moment. Then hit send. A few minutes later, 3 bubbles appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a reply. You're being influenced by people who don't understand family. I smiled sadly at the screen. Because that was the irony. I understood family too well. I understood what it looked like when loyalty was demanded but never given back. When love was conditional on obedience. When peace meant silence. I put the phone away and turned off the lights. Slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The next morning, there was a different kind of message. From my aunt. The one who rarely spoke, always stayed neutral. I heard there was drama, she wrote. I just want to say, I'm proud of you. I wish I had set boundaries sooner in my life. My throat tightened, because it confirmed something I had begun to suspect. Sometimes the loudest people in a family aren't the strongest. Sometimes the quiet ones notice everything and just don't have the language yet. Over the next few days, the storm calmed. Fewer calls, shorter texts. The energy shifted from pressure to distance. Not cold, not cruel, just recalculating. And weirdly, I didn't panic. I filled my time with things that fed me instead. Long walks, actual meals, work that felt purposeful, conversations that didn't revolve around guilt. Slowly, a new reality started forming. One where I'd embrace myself every time my phone buzzed. One where I could say, "I'm not available," without drowning in shame. One where I wasn't always preparing a defense. But with clarity came grief too. Because for every part of me that felt free, another part whispered, I wish they had chosen differently. Not more money, not more gifts, just more care, more listening, more effort. A week later, my dad finally sent a message that felt different. Short, simple. "We don't know how to do this, but we're thinking about what you said." I read it twice, 3 times. Not an apology. Not yet, but a crack. A small one. And for the first time, I didn't rush in to fill it with comfort. I let it be, because growth is not always fireworks. Sometimes it is the quiet decision to stop walking back into rooms that ask you to vanish. And as I sat there, phone in hand, I realized something that changed everything. I hadn't lost my family. I had stopped losing myself for them. About 2 weeks later, life had almost fallen into a new rhythm. Work, walks, cooking dinner for myself like it was an act of care instead of obligation. I was learning what quiet felt like, without dread hiding underneath it. And then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed again. A message from my mom. Just 4 words. "Can we meet? Please." No lecture. No guilt. No paragraphs. Just that. I stared at the screen for a while. The old reflex tried to jump in. Hurry. Fix. Smooth. But another part of me answered instead. The slower part. The grounded part. I typed, "Public place." My schedule. No surprises. She agreed faster than I expected. Okay. We picked a small coffee shop halfway between our houses. Neutral ground. I arrived early and chose a table near the window. The world outside moved as usual. Cars. People. Sun on glass. Meanwhile, inside my chest, everything felt strangely calm. My mom walked in 5 minutes later. No dramatic entrance. No storm. Just a woman with tired eyes holding onto a purse too tightly. She sat down. For a minute, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't hostile. It was unfamiliar. Finally, she exhaled. "I don't know where to start." I nodded. "Start anywhere." She looked down at her hands. Turned her wedding ring, slowly. "Your dad and we've been talking. A lot." My body braced, just a little. Waiting for the but. "You said some hard things," she continued. "Things I didn't want to hear. Things that made me feel like a bad mother." I didn't jump in to comfort her. I let the sentence exist. She swallowed. My instinct was to defend myself. To explain. To say, "We did our best. You should be grateful." She paused. But then I remembered something. Her eyes lifted to mine. Softer. "Doing your best doesn't mean people can't get hurt." The words landed somewhere deep and sore. I didn't speak. I wanted to hear the rest. "I thought back," she said quietly. "The times you cried in your room. The times you stopped talking. The way you always said, 'It's fine.' And I believed you. Because I wanted to believe you. Because believing anything else meant I had to change." A small knot formed in my throat. She kept going. "We made things about peace. About not making scenes. About everyone behaving." Her mouth trembled slightly. What I didn't see was how often that meant asking you to swallow yourself. The room blurred for a second. I blinked. Stayed still. Let the moment breathe. "About the wedding," she said. I told myself we were being reasonable. That it was one day. That adults can coexist. That you being uncomfortable shouldn't ruin things for everyone else. She winced at her own words. But it never occurred to me that maybe, if my child felt unsafe, the thing that needed changing wasn't you. She looked ashamed. Tired. Real. "I'm not asking you to forget. Or to pretend we didn't choose wrong. I'm asking if you'll let us try again." My chest tightened. Not from pressure. From something gentler. I took a slow breath. "Trying again," I said carefully, "doesn't mean going back to the old way. It means new rules. New honesty. Boundaries." She nodded. "I know. It means sometimes I will say no," I added. "And you might not like it." A small, sad smile touched her face. I already don't like it, she said softly. But I'm starting to understand why it matters. Silence again. Not heavy. Reflective. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope. My stomach stiffened. This isn't money, she said quickly. I'm not trying to buy peace. She pushed it across the table. It's a letter. I hesitated, then opened it. Her handwriting curved across the page. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Just honest. She had written about patterns. About favoritism she never wanted to admit. About how she mistook silence for strength and compliance for maturity. About fear. About control. About things her own parents had done that she swore she'd never repeat, and somehow still did. By the time I finished reading, my eyes were wet. Not from validation. Not from victory. From grief. For the girl I had been. For the mother she wished she had known how to be. I folded the letter carefully. Thank you, I said. Not forgiveness. Not absolution. Just gratitude for truth. We talked for another hour. Not perfectly. Not smoothly. Sometimes she backslid into defensiveness. Sometimes I edge-guarded too hard. But there were apologies. Real ones. Without but. Without if. I'm sorry I made you feel small in your own family, she said. I'm sorry I didn't protect you when I should have. Those words didn't magically stitch everything back together. But they opened a door that had been sealed shut. When we finally stood, she hesitated like she wanted to hug me, but stopped. Is that okay? She asked quietly. For the first time in a long time, I got to answer a question about my body. Yes, I said. And it was. Outside, the sky had shifted into early evening. Orange fading to blue. We said goodbye. No big promises. No cinematic ending. Just two people trying. On the way home, I realized something important. Boundaries aren't walls that keep love out. They're doors that require people to knock. A few weeks passed after that coffee shop conversation. Not everything transformed overnight. There were still awkward pauses. Still moments where my mom said something old and I had to gently say, no. That doesn't work for me anymore. There were days my dad stayed quiet instead of engaging, like silence was safer than saying the wrong thing. But there was movement. Slow. Imperfect. Real. And more importantly, there was movement inside me too. I didn't wake up bracing for impact every morning. I didn't rehearse conversations in my head before making a simple phone call. I didn't crumble when someone was disappointed in me. I started noticing small victories. Saying, I can't talk right now. I'll call later. And then actually calling later. Leaving gatherings early when my body felt drained, without inventing excuses. Choosing myself in tiny, unglamorous ways. One afternoon, my dad finally asked to meet. Just us. We sat on a park bench overlooking the water. He stared ahead for a long time. I don't like therapy, he said abruptly. I raised an eyebrow. Okay. He rubbed his hands together. But I've been talking to someone anyway. The wind shifted. The water moved. I waited. He asked me, my dad said, what I would have wanted if I were you. Sitting in our house. Not feeling believed. His voice cracked just a little. And I realized I would have wanted someone to stand up for me. And instead, I asked you to be quiet. The sentence sank into the space between us. Heavy. Honest. I can't redo those moments, he went on. But I can stop pretending they didn't happen. He looked at me then. Really looked. I'm sorry. No disclaimers. No self-pity. Just that. I didn't rush to fill the silence with forgiveness. I let the apology exist. Thank you, I finally said. We kept walking. Talked about nothing and everything. Work, food, memories that didn't hurt. It wasn't perfect. It was human. And that felt new. Months passed. Seasons shifted. Our family slowly rewrote its language. Not everyone adapted. Some relatives rolled their eyes. Called me sensitive. Dramatic. Modern. I stopped explaining myself. Boundaries filtered people on their own. On my birthday that year, something happened that surprised me. My parents came over. No big party. No production. Just dinner. A cake. A card. Inside the card, instead of money or advice or subtle expectations, there was one sentence. We're learning. Thank you for not disappearing completely. I cried. Not because everything was fixed, But because for once, I wasn't invisible. And then, sometime later, I found myself back at another family gathering. Different event. Different year. Same extended relatives. He wasn't invited. No one whispered about reconciliation. No one pushed. No one asked me to be the bigger person. Instead, my mom made sure I had a seat next to someone safe. My dad checked in quietly, "You okay?" Not controlling. Not hovering. Just present. And for the first time at a family table in years, I laughed without calculating. I breathed without shrinking. I belonged, not because I endured, but because they finally learned to meet me halfway. On the drive home, I thought back to the beginning. To the girl who believed love meant silence. Who thought being easy was the same as being loved. Who thought speaking up would destroy everything. She wasn't weak. She was surviving with the tools she had. But survival is not the same as living. I also thought about something else. How often people hear stories like mine and say, "So you cut them off." As if boundaries mean annihilation. Sometimes they do. Sometimes safety requires distance. But sometimes, when people are willing to face themselves, boundaries become bridges. Hard to cross, but worth it. I don't pretend we're the perfect family now. Old habits tug at our sleeves sometimes. I still have days when the past echoes louder than the present. But I have something I didn't before. Language. Choice. A spine, both literally and metaphorically, that I know how to protect. And if you're listening to this and you recognize yourself anywhere in my story, I want to say something gently. You are not difficult for needing respect. You are not dramatic for naming what hurts. You are not ungrateful for wanting to feel safe in your own family. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is refuse to disappear. My parents didn't magically become different people. They learned. Slowly. Uncomfortably. And so did I. That's not revenge in the cinematic sense. There were no grand speeches with thunder clapping behind me. No righteous fireworks. My revenge looked quieter. It looked like telling the truth out loud. It looked like saying no without apologizing for existing. It looked like walking away when I wasn't heard, and walking back only when it was safe. In the end, they didn't lose a daughter. They lost the version of me who kept sacrificing herself so everyone else could stay comfortable. And I didn't lose my family. I gained myself,